Ever since you had transferred to his class, Todoroki had been by your side, helping you with homework, assignments, projects, the like. Although, you two didn't start as the happy-go-lucky duo you grew to become. It took quite some time, and a lot of coincidental encounters outside of classes to nudge the two of you together. It also took time for Todoroki to even consider you as a friend. If it weren't for Midoriya, he probably would have continued to see you as a mere acquaintance. And if it weren't for Shouto beginning to see you as a friend, he probably wouldn't have developed a soft spot for you. Todoroki sat quietly, both waiting for his teacher to walk in and listening to the conversation you were having with Kaminari. Shouto thought nothing of it, ignoring the way his hands fidgeted, nails digging lightly into his palm as he balled his fists upon seeing the electric blonde lean closer to you. He didn't know why it bothered him so much. It was normal to see Kaminari Denki flirting with someone. Hell, it pretty much became the norm in 1A. But for some reason, seeing Denki try his luck with you bothered him more than the blonde's usual courting attempts. Was it because he knew you could do so much better? No, that couldn't be it. Kaminari wasn't a bad guy. Saying so would just be rude. Nonetheless, Todoroki leaned in and whispered in your ear. "Why not just humor him?" he said, heterochromatic eyes darting quickly to the blonde before looking back to you. "His constant interruptions are starting to get on my nerves." Todoroki meant it more as a joke, and a part of him lit up when you laughed in response. He liked hearing you laugh. The small flicker quickly dissipated when Shouto heard you agree to actually go out with Kaminari. He wasn't serious. He only said so just to assist you in getting Kaminari off your back. When Aizawa walked in and everyone returned to their seats, Todoroki sat frozen for a moment before looking over to you, still baffled that you actually agreed. He was even more baffled when you walked down to the common room later that night, dressed in a way that accentuated the best parts of you, Todoroki almost spilling his drink on the counter upon seeing you. The girls sure did a number on you, in the best possible way. You had walked up to him, making a sarcastic comment about leaving him speechless, which Shouto had no problem brushing off as a part of your sometimes cheeky attitude. His dismissive demeanor was also a means to hide the fact that you truly had him speechless with how gorgeous you were. "You look great," he complimented, sounding as sincere as he could while remaining casual. He hoped you didn't catch the slight crack in his voice as he tried to discreetly clear his throat. He almost smacked himself in the face when he unconsciously reached out to brush a loose strand of hair away from your eyes. Yet, your smile gave him some sense of relief. "Have fun," he said, his voice almost trailing off as you walked past him to meet with the blonde waiting by the door. He did mean it. He wanted nothing more than to see you happy. You were his friend, after all. But for some reason, he didn't like seeing you walk off, your back turned towards him. He didn't like the way Kaminari laid a hand on your back, Todoroki feeling his own palm burn with envy. He didn't like how the two of you disappeared into the night, the last bit of you slipping past the door, the hard wood shutting with a click that was almost deafening in Shouto's ears. He didn't like it one bit. "This is stupid," you said bluntly, dropping your pencil and falling back on the floor, rubbing your eyes in exasperation. Todoroki sat beside you in your dorm, looking towards you with a sigh, followed by an amused smile. He wasn't sure if he was being needy or dramatic, but he missed your presence in the past few days. The only times he would ever see you now were during classes and the occasional running into each other in the common room. "Come on," he said with a lilt in his voice, poking you in the arm with his pen, coaxing you to get up. It was not a surprise, but you were falling behind on assignments, which resulted in Todoroki coming to the rescue as per usual. "We can take a break once we finish this." The promise of a chance to relax brought a sliver of determination in you, albeit you still wanted nothing but to shove everything aside and throw yourself on your bed at this very moment. You heaved yourself off the floor and turned to the dual-haired boy with a thankful smile. Grueling minutes passed, and finally completing the excessive amounts of homework had taken a toll on your mental state. You were barely conscious as you slowly began to nod off, Todoroki jumping the moment your head landed on his shoulder. He froze as you made yourself comfortable, nuzzling your cheek against him. This wasn't the first time he showed signs of platonic physical touch, but somehow this felt different to Todoroki, more intimate. He hoped you felt it too. What would I do without you, Shouto? You hummed, fingers moving to lace themselves around his. Some people don't get how amazing of a friend you can be. You subconsciously tugged on one of his fingers, the gesture and the feeling of his soft hands lulling you. Every movement of your hand caused Shouto's to burn, igniting a fire in his chest that scared him. He was afraid. Afraid that you didn't see him the same way he was beginning to see you. He had spent months denying these thoughts and emotions, brushing off every comment and teasing remark from the girls in class. At first, he had no problem with looking over their teasing, but the more time he spent around you, or lack thereof, considering the multiple dates you had been on with Kaminari, he had begun to question if he was merely just a friend to you. Your actions towards him didn't make it any easier for his heart. The way your hands moved and weaved around each other so affectionately contradicted the way the word friend tumbled from your lips. Todoroki just wanted to know where he really stood in your relationship. He eventually moved you back to your bed, taking the liberty to clean up your schoolwork and discarded snack wrappers. He was in the middle of tucking his notebooks away the moment he heard you mumble his name. I'm here. He shuffled over and knelt until his face was at level with yours. Your eyes were weary, barely open as you looked up at him. Your hand slowly made its way to rest on his neck, letting out a deep sigh. You mean so much to me, you know? You're like an angel, you whispered, fingers playing with the hair at the base of his neck. Todoroki gulped. You seemed to have lost your filter in your lethargic state, shamelessly allowing your thoughts to spill from your lips and doing terrible things to his heart. He held his breath for a moment, his hand hovering over your own, clearly hesitating as his thoughts ran wild. Was there a different meaning to your sleep-induced words, or were his emotions reading too much into it? His hand eventually settled on your arm, rubbing it in a soothing motion as he looked back to you. I could say the same to you, he replied instead, slowly prying your hands from his neck. He would be lying if he said he didn't already miss your warm touch as he tucked your arm into your blanket. Now get some rest, Angel. It didn't take long for you to drift back to sleep, with the help of a few head pats from Todoroki, allowing him to quietly slip out of your room. The moon was bright, just barely above the horizon as it basked the halls with a soft, cool glow. Todoroki hesitated to move back to his own room, hand still gripping your doorknob. He turned back to the door, biting his lip as his eyes traveled to your name written on the plaque beside it. He traced every line with his gaze. He was so incredibly smitten with you, and it took him this long to finally accept it. He shook his head before resting it against the door. Am I just a friend to you? Tonight just had to be the night that insomnia decided to kick Shouto's ass, causing him to shift uncomfortably against his futon. The four walls of his room felt like a cage, and his mind was even more so. Nothing but thoughts of you swarmed his head, drowning in the abyss of what-ifs and possible confessions. Was there even a chance that you would feel the same way? Despite the seemingly never-ending dates and hangouts with the electric blonde, did Shouto have a chance to win your affection? even though you most likely only saw him as a friend? He wasn't sure when exactly he left his room for the common room kitchen, but a part of him paid no mind to it. The room was cast in a tranquil glow, the song of crickets nestled in trees and gentle rustles of leaves playing quietly and easing Shouto's mind. Todoroki? His shoulders stiffened in surprise as he turned to find none other than the person that took over his thoughts. He slowly walked over, and Todoroki had to swallow. Pajamas were nothing to gawk at, but it might have been his growing attraction that the very sight of you in something so simple caused his heart to stir. You shone against the gleam of the night that Todoroki had to catch himself from staring too long. You two shared a simple conversation as you seated yourself on one of the high chairs while Todoroki prepared a drink for you. He listened as you talked about your relationship with Denki, which he hated to admit irked him beyond belief, and your conflicted emotions. There's just, I don't know, something stopping me, I guess, you said, taking another swig of your drink. Shouto sat beside you, quietly taking a sip of his water as you continued with your rambling spree, nodding along and hanging on to every word you spoke. Every word that flowed from your lips spoke so fervently, it was almost difficult not to listen. Even if the topic you went on about was none other than KamiDenk. The way your hands moved and the evident glimmer in your eyes caused a small crack to form in Shouto's heart. Denki left his mark on you, there was no doubt about it, and Shouto would hate to take that away. Still, it was his last chance. He had to take it. Hey, he interrupted you in the middle of your spiel. If you don't mind, I have a confession to make. This was it. You gave him a nod, Todoroki taking in a deep breath and exhaling quietly. He met your gaze, trying not to let his waver as he drowned in the depth of your eyes, trying to calm his pounding heart. Be honest with me. What am I to you? You blinked once, then twice. Your lack of response was beginning to make him antsy, shifting slightly in his seat as he refused to break away from your gaze. He almost sighed in relief when you were the one to look away, only to turn back to him after much thought. Your brows were furrowed when you replied, "You're my best friend, Todoroki." Of course. Just what he expected. The last candlelight of hope that he had been holding onto was quickly snuffed the moment he heard those two words. Those prior signs of platonic intimacy were just that. Platonic. Nothing more. You didn't see him the same way he did you. You never did. And he had to accept that. Realization hit you like a tidal wave, your eyes widening as you studied the obvious crestfallen look on his face. You have feelings for... It's all right, he said, his soothing voice filling the quiet that followed after you trailed off. I can't force you to return these feelings. His hands instinctively moved to wipe at the tears beginning to trail down your cheeks, gently leading you into an embrace. Your apologies were muffled against his chest, and he eased you with words of reassurance. You knew how amazing of a guy Shouto was, yet you also knew your heart was stolen by Denki. You couldn't bring yourself to return Shouto's feelings out of pity. He didn't deserve that. No matter what happens, you're still my best friend. I'm not gonna let anything change that. He mumbled, his fingers tangled in your hair and massaging your scalp. And if Denki does anything to hurt you, I'm kicking his ass. You let out a choked laugh, lightly slapping him on the chest. Your arms were wrapped tightly around him, hoping he could feel the lingering apology and the love and care you had for him. As a friend. Thanks, Shouto, for being here for me, you mumbled as you gave him a gentle squeeze. Even if you couldn't return his feelings, Shouto was too lovely of a friend to let go, and he felt the same about you. He couldn't let the flames of your friendship die out solely from a confession gone wrong. He treasured you, and although it hurt like hell, he was ready to treasure more memories created by your friendship. Of course, you know I always will be. He gave you a squeeze of his own, burying his face into your neck, memorizing how your body fit against his. You felt perfect being held by him, but he knew there was someone else who would better fill the space in your arms. But once more, just once more, let him be selfish and make this moment out to be something it wasn't. You sighed, shifting in your seat to face him. And here I am, practically confessing everything to you like you're some sort of priest. But what about you? Todoroki hummed in question. What about me? You sighed again, though it came out more like a quiet groan. You rested your chin on your palm, toying with your half-empty cup in the other. I can tell when something's bothering you, Sho. So, spill it. Todoroki was about to brush it off like he normally did, but the taunting tone in your voice and determined curiosity flaring in your eyes made him hesitate. It's nothing, just school, he replied, though it came out more like a mumble. You scoffed, completely abandoning your drink. We both know damn well you aren't struggling with school, you remarked before shuffling closer to him. Spill the beans, guy. It's nothing to worry about, I can assure you. Bullshit. Watch your tongue. I'll watch my tongue if you watch who you're talking to. You groaned, leaning back and crossing your arms. Todo, I like to think I know you better than everyone in 1A. I know when something's in that pretty head of yours. You poked at his temple before bracing your arms on the countertop. If you don't tell me now, I will find out eventually. He trusted your words, and that made his anxiety boil. Just how did he last this long without you finding out about his massive crush? The 1A girls already had their suspicions. Thank God Shouto was able to keep his cool at that time and dismiss them. And it was only a matter of time before you found out about his helpless pining. So what was the best choice of action in this scenario? Shouto wasn't sure, but he was going to damn well try. You want to know what's on my mind then? Alright. You weren't expecting it, and frankly, neither was he. But the second he blinked, he was a mere inches away from you. His hands were braced on either side of you, trapping you between his body and the counter. His face remained calm, but inside, the man was hollering. Where the ever-loving fuck did he get this idea? And why did he think the idea was good enough to initiate? The surprise on your face made him want to apologize, but it simultaneously gave him the confidence to continue. Just what am I to you, There was a low husk in his voice as he asked you, and he picked up on the faint bobbing of your throat as you swallowed. You shut your mouth when your voice cracked, swallowing again as you laid your hands on his shoulders. You breathed in heavily. You could feel your heart thundering mercilessly against your ribcage, that it made it almost impossible to speak. Nonetheless, you pushed it all aside and opened your mouth. The morning went by as per usual, aside from the fact that it was killing Todoroki from the inside. Did you give him a response to what you thought of him? Yes. Was it a response he was not at all expecting? Yes. Was your answer so vague that Todoroki literally wanted to find you just so you could clarify? Judging by the way Shouto got little to no sleep the night before, definitely. He hadn't seen or heard from you all Sunday, and it was beginning to drive him up the walls. Maybe it was because he was growing needy for your company, but also for the fact that your response to him was, "You are to me." What did you mean by that? He wasn't able to see you until the following Monday, where he witnessed you pacing back and forth between Mina and Ochako. He wasn't able to catch much of your conversation before Aizawa walked in and classes began, until you quickly slid a note towards him before focusing back to the front of the class. Printed in your neat handwriting were the words written, "Meet me in my dorm during lunch." The morning dragged on slower than Shouto wanted, often catching his leg bouncing in anticipation as he eyed the clock on the wall. 12:29. 1 minute until they were dismissed. He wasn't the only one keeping check of the time. You were silently glancing back and forth from the clock to your notes, fidgeting with your uniform. You practically leaped from your chair once the bell rang, giving Todoroki one last glance before scurrying out the door. Shouto, though curious about what you had planned, moved at a steadier pace. Packing his belongings, he waved his friends off before walking back to Heights Alliance. Climbing the stairs to your floor, he reached your door and gave it a curt knock. Only then did he realize that the door was cracked open. He hated to invade your privacy, but your faint "come in" reassured him, pushing the door further to allow himself entrance. He called your name, scanning your seemingly empty room. Nothing was out of the ordinary, aside from the fact that a sudden force nearly knocked him over. He twisted his body, his quirk at the ready, until he realized it was just you with your arms latched onto his waist. "Hi," you smiled cheekily at him. As adorable as you looked at that very moment, Shouto yanked you off of him and plopped you on your bed. You pouted up at him. "Why?" he asked. You tilted your head. Because?" You puffed your cheeks, rocking back and forth with those doe eyes that Todoroki absolutely adored. "Because what?" "Because." "Because what? I need a coherent response from you."
Because I love you?" You replied with a small grin, leaning back on your arms and swinging your legs.
He didn't seem to catch what you said as he continued, sitting beside you and pinching the bridge of his nose.
"No. I mean, why are we in your dorm during lunch? And why didn't I see you last night? Was it because I asked you what you thought of—"
That was when your words finally registered.
"Say that one more time?"
Your smile widened. "You are to me?"
"I still don't get what that means. But no, the other thing."
"What other thing?" Your faint innocence caused Shoto's face to fall, but you really couldn't help it. He was very cute when he was agitated. He shook his head.
"Don't play dumb with me, Angel."
You hummed, leaning in until your foreheads were merely touching. From the dim light of your room, you could catch the faint glow of Shoto's face. "Why don't you tell me what I said, Sho?" The way you spoke was challenging. It caused Shouto to sigh in defeat. There was no use in holding back now. Swallowing his nervousness, he replied,
"I love you."
He was firm, his heterochromatic eyes refusing to leave yours as he held his ground despite his rapidly beating heart. You were very much the same. You lost yourself in those 3 words spilling from his lips, so sweet and so sure that you couldn't help but reply, "I love you too." There was no joking tone in your voice, just the sincere love and passion that you had for him, all reflected in your glistening eyes and smile. You naturally took his hand in yours, filling the spaces between his fingers. You could tell your sudden confession caught him off guard, by the way his gentle squeeze of your hand immediately fell limp, before tightening once he processed your words.
You better not be messing with me,
he said breathlessly. You shook your head, your smile still remaining. You are to me. What I meant to say was, you are everything to me. What I feel for you is more than what words can describe.
But what about you and Kaminari?
We got things sorted out when I told him how I felt about you. You gave his hand another squeeze of reassurance, leaning in until your noses bumped each other's. Don't worry, Sho. I'm all yours. Who moved forward first? You couldn't say. But what you could say is, the blend of hot and cold against your lips felt like absolute heaven. You could tell how considerate he was just by the way he kissed you, only moving when you did. You really had to stop yourself from smothering him. Despite Todoroki's lack of experience when it came to kissing someone, you wouldn't have it any other way. The both of you spent the whole lunch break together in your dorm, sharing bowls of cold soba, which may or may not have been the main reason why you asked Shouto over to your dorm. And overall, spending time with each other. Not a lot changed when your friendship transitioned to an actual relationship, aside from the occasional kisses exchanged in between bites of food, and the ear-splitting squeals coming from your friends the moment you and Todoroki returned to class, hands in hand and both adorning lovesick smiles.
Oh, you are to me, everything there is to be. And I want you to know that you are to me, more than words can ever say. Oh, you're the star that shines in me.